Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa. Welcome to Arctic Artist Studios. Come watch me paint a new character design today. I'm really hoping that this video ends up on the home pages of the right people because this is my very own rendition, my very own take on Calypso from Epic the Musical. As a visual artist, part of me experiencing the songs of Epic the Musical was to really see the characters in my head and play out how that all looks. So of course, as soon as I heard Calypso's first song when it debuted, I immediately had a picture in my head of this beautiful woman who lived on this like Caribbean-esque island. Of course, it's a made-up island, but I always thought of it as like a very beachy Caribbean island. So this is the portrait of who I'm drawing today. My character design for Calypso is definitely going to look pretty different from the canon character design that Jorge has created for Calypso, because of course I hadn't seen it when I first listened to the song and dreamt up this Calypso. But I think that's the fun of it, is we don't really have a set design for these characters yet, so I love seeing people's takes on all these different characters and gods and goddesses that are in this musical. So I'm really happy to bring her to life today. What you see me doing now is just filling in my lines with flat colors. I do this first before going into any shading on any part of the painting. That way I know exactly what colors are going to be around other colors and how it's all going to play together in the painting. Unfortunately, I don't have a image of my sketch to show you, but I sketched this out in a sketchbook, traditional sketchbook, before I brought it into Krita. I'm using Krita today. And then I lined it all with just a black line. That way I could go in with my colors here. This is usually how I work with all of my character designs, unless I'm going for a very specific style, but this is just me, this is just my style today. So when it comes to color though, I am a little less confident. So I went through, and you can kind of see up above, but I'll put it up on the screen. I went through a lot of color swatches, color sketches, before settling on the one that I'm painting today. It started with 5 that I was really vibing with. I was trying out different things, and then I narrowed that down to 2 that I kind of mixed and matched with, played around with, added the wreath, the lei that she's wearing there, and a flower in her hair, to really bring it to life, and then decided on the one that you're seeing today. And so right now you can see I'm cleaning up the beads, and so you can see right now I'm cleaning up the line art on the beads on the end of her hair. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier, but it was a little sloppy, so I wanted to go in and really clean up those lines. I did keep the strands of her locks a little bit more organic in the line weight. It goes from thick to thin. There's a lot more dimension in those lines. I really like that look for drawing locks, so I kept it as such. I think truly locks are some of my favorite hair to draw. I just love the flow of them and the texture that they have. I already had my base skin tone already picked out for her, so once I go in and target some shadow colors and some highlight colors, I'm all set to start shading her body. So that's what you'll see me go into next, is I kind of break it up into 3 different layers, maybe 4 depending. It's usually shadows, deeper shadows, highlights, and maybe even a lighter highlight layer, and that helps me really capture the light on my character. This is when I really hone in too. You can see I've cleared out my color references. I don't need them anymore. I'm focusing on this color palette, and I'm really getting into the nitty-gritty. I'm starting with big shapes, patches of light on her arms, her chest, shoulders, legs, and then I'm going in with lighter highlights on top of that, my mega highlight layer, you can see, to really show the sun shining on her. Whenever you're painting anything, you always need a light source, and I don't put mine in the canvas, but my thought process of this painting specifically is that it was coming from the top right side of the canvas. So it's coming down onto her, so anything on that side of her body is definitely getting hit with light, but also some of the other side is still getting hit with light as well. There's some bounce light, there's a whole lot of lighting stuff happening. And if you guys would ever like me to go into detail about lighting and painting lighting, you can definitely let me know down in the comments below. I will make a whole video on that. There's just so much to talk about with lighting that I couldn't explain it all to you right now. But I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to educate anybody who's interested. So please let me know if you'd like me to make a video on that or any other subject matter. And you can see now as we come into the face of Calypso, I'm going a little bit more delicate with my lines. My highlights have big, broad shapes, but my mega highlights are going to be a little bit more painterly. I use some lines, is the best way I can describe it, is I kind of scribble, to be honest. And that gives it a little bit of a softer look. I don't want these harsh lines, these harsh shapes on her face, which is the focal point really of this character. The face is always the focal point of the character, I feel. You want their face to be interesting, and you want to be able to look into the character's eyes, right? And for Calypso here, I really wanted to keep her face nice and soft. What I really love about Calypso as a character is her naive girlhood, almost. Odysseus is the first person she has seen since she's been exiled on her island, and I can't help but feel a little bad for her when she sings "I'm Not Sorry for Loving You," although the passive aggressiveness really shows her manipulation in that song. But I think Calypso, as she is in Epic the Musical, is a little misunderstood. She did some bad things, yes, but she has this confidence about her, and I feel like she just owns her sexuality. I thought she'd be such a fun character to design, and I have a little bit of a soft spot for her. She's absolutely one of my favorites in this musical. It was definitely a conscious choice to make Calypso dark-skinned, regardless of who plays her in the official recording of the musical. Right away, I knew she needed to be an island girl. And just historically and genetically, if you live in an area of a lot of sun exposure, you have darker skin to combat the UV rays from that sun. On top of that, though, there's this mold that society usually puts on the Greek gods and goddesses that says that they are white most of the time. And I really wanted to challenge that by creating a diverse cast for my character designs of Epic the Musical. I see other fans doing the same, as well as the creator Jorge himself in the voice actors he casts and the animations he oversees. I think it's really important to continue to put BIPOC characters in modern media. It's what those communities need. They need to see themselves on the big screen, out in the world. It means a lot when you put a lot of time and consideration into your character designs and give them a lot of meaning. I know that's something I'm trying to do with every character design that I create. If you go back just a tiny bit in this video, you'll see that I've added lighter skinned palms to her hands, and it's a very slight detail, but it's that little bit that really adds to the whole of the character. If I'm capturing a certain person, I want it to capture all of them. What I'm doing now is I'm picking out my highlights and shadows again for the hair. I always like to do this before I start painting anything. I don't want to start painting the shadows unless I already have the highlight color. It really keeps it cohesive. I can see how it looks on my palette to make sure it's all making sense together next to each other. And I went ahead and I did a darker version as well. I was trying to figure out exactly how dark I wanted her hair to be. I know that people of the skin color of the Caribbean, their hair is probably like black, but it wasn't gonna look too good with all of my black line art that I already done. So I had to lighten it up. I made it a little bit more of a purple shade, so it still looked like a deep brown, but had some light shades to it. And when I made it a little bit lighter for the highlights, I was able to still get that line art in there and show the definition of the locks. I didn't end up putting my shadow color on the color palette that I have to the left, but I did put some darker purplish browns behind her shoulders and to kind of define a couple of the locks, especially up by the top and on her scalp for the hair there, just to add a bit more dimension. It was looking a little flat, so I did do that, but most of this is the highlight that's gonna show through to show the light hitting those individual strands of hair. A lot of my time was spent painting her hair, and when I do these speed paints and I record myself and I look back, it always amazes me how long it actually took me to paint a final character design. I don't always go super in depth with the shading, but when I do, I end up spending so long on it. I think I get really caught up in the tones and I don't know, just painting the shadows and the highlights, I guess. I think it's worth it in the end. If you stay till the end and see the final product, I think it's totally worth it. But it really just amazes me how long it takes to paint these things. What I'm doing now too is I'm going back in and I'm darkening my line art. It looked like it was a little bit of a lighter black than I expected it to be, so to help with the hair strands and the dimension within her hair, I really wanted to make those lines black, so that's what I did there. And now I'm going in and I'm putting in the little decorations on her top and her skirt. Brought back up my reference brought back up my reference color scheme here with the full body, just to get the vibe of it. You know, I like to look at references. Even sometimes I'll have my sketchbook with my original sketch out when I'm painting digitally, just to try to retain that that original like feel that I have to the painting. I really do love these little skirt and top designs that I did. They were kind of on a whim. When I was sketching out the colors, I just kind of did some doodles, some little sketchy doodles, and I think I really liked how it turned out. I played along the lines of beachy and floral, and I think I came up with something that's like really interesting and brings something to her outfit that isn't just like basic colors. And then from there, once I had the details on the clothing, I'm just going in with shadows and highlights, same way I did with the hair, same way I did with the body, to show where the light is hitting her. I did end up turning these layers to multiply blending mode. Right up above my layer panel, it says multiply instead of normal, and doing so allows the decorations on the skirt to show through the shadows and the highlights. And I just turned the opacity down to match kind of the color that I had picked in my color palette for the shading and highlights, and that also repeated for the darker shadows and then the highlights. And I can't recall if I did a mega highlight on the skirt and the bra, but if I were to, it would be the same thing. It would be multiplied instead of normal layers. That way it all shows there. And now that I think about it, I may have turned the highlight to screen. Yes, I turned the highlight layers to screen. It won't work if you use multiply on those, because the color that's on the layer is lighter than the color that's underneath, so it's not going to show anything. Screen is going to make it lighter than the color that you're using, so you'll have to lower the opacity, but it will also let the decoration show through. This process was basically the same for the cream underskirt that she's wearing, as well as her top. So there's not much more to say about that process, but if you'd like an in-depth kind of tutorial about how I personally shade and highlight that, I'd be happy to show you. This is a very sped up version, so you might not be able to get all the little details or whatever, but I've used blending modes like multiply and screen for maybe my whole career as an artist, pre-professional career. It is a great tool to use. I highly suggest using the blending layers. You don't have to worry about picking the exact right color, because even if you're slightly grayer or darker than you need to be, once you put on that multiply blending mode for shadows, it all really evens it out. Unless you're crazy off with a weird different color, I think it'll work out. So I highly suggest using that method when shadows are in play. Now you may notice that when it jumps the clip here, I did shade her top, but I hated it. I hated it so much. It wasn't working for me. I thought it was what I wanted, but it's not. So I go back and I redo that later, so you'll get to see me actually paint that. But some of my favorite things to paint is gold detailing. Specifically here, it's this gold jewelry that she has on her torso, and then I also add some hair beading jewelry. Gold jewelry is just beautiful. And it's so easy to paint too. I start off with a yellow, which I believe here was the same yellow as the skirt, just for easy consistency of colors. I chose a very dark brownish to put on top, and then a really white, like creamy white for the highlights. And you wouldn't think it's like that great of a color match because it's so far from each other. A white and a dark brown, but it actually looks like gold. It does. And when I do the hair beads later, you'll definitely see it come to life as gold. I think her little body beads were a little bit too small to really see the full effect, but it is really a cool effect to do gold. It's so fun. As we move on to the face, I'm focusing on the lips first. I'm looking for a sort of like bit more than natural lip color. I want it to be not as realistic as just not wearing any makeup. I never pictured her wearing makeup, but I want her lips to be very like full and juicy and a little bit like redder than the natural lip, which I think just is really fun for her character. She's very sultry. She's very like sexy, you know? I ended up toning it down a bit more later on, but went in with the teeth first, put in the shadows for the teeth, and then moved on to the eyes. The way I paint eyes doesn't really change a whole lot, but I think it does matter on what style I'm going for. And here I am looking for a bit more of a realistic style, but also wanted to, like I said earlier, really draw you into her eyes and make her look I don't know, just so appealing to look into her eyes. So I added a bit more light to them with that bigger white circle that I toned down the opacity on, so that it really brings you into her eyes. The final highlights are being added to her locks, and then you finally get to see me redo this top. What I'm doing is I'm copying the layers that I had, but I ended up deleting them anyway because what I painted was better. But I wanted the option to go back if I actually hated the second round of painting the top. But what I did this time is I kept it very simple. I started with those big simple shapes that would outline exactly where those shadows would be. And then after I determined where I wanted all of those, it was going in and just kind of loosening up some of the lines to show that there was a bit of a different fabric to her top. It wasn't the same texture as her skin, right? We want to show some difference and some variety in texture. So that's why you see some little extra lines around to kind of soften up those shadows and highlights. I really just tooled around with it. At this point, I'm almost done with the final painting, but I had taken the day to really step away and reconsider how I had painted that top. So I was able to come back with a fresh new view on what I was painting, and I really like the second way I did it much better. A lot of times when you're painting things, when you're doing anything art related, you need to remember to take a step back, look at it from afar, take a break, and like really think about your artistic choices. A lot of times you'll come back and you'll have like a different view on the art that you made. I feel like that happens a lot. You might notice if you're an artist over the years, as you look back on old art you've done, and you sit there and you wonder why you painted it that way, or what you were thinking when you made this choice to make this line thicker, when if you had painted that now, when you had done that now, it would have looked completely different. You wouldn't have done it that way. But that's where learning comes in. And we all grow and we all learn new things as we continue on our art journeys. So it's all about growth. And I took the night, I thought about what I wanted to actually paint instead of just going right ahead and painting on her top, and I came out with a better choice. And you can see me filling in these gold beads on her locks now. If you look very closely, you can see where I've like done lines of the darker gold coloring. But when you zoom out, it really gives the effect of this shiny gold rounded object, and I think that's really cool. And the highlights just really bring it all together, makes it pop, and I think it's like the coolest trick that I've ever learned within painting. The last few things I need to add are details on top of her that I didn't really line into everything else because I knew they were going to be on top, and I didn't want to mess with all the lines and make it all muddy. So now I'm putting an extra piece of hair on top of her to show that it's kind of fallen out of her little bun ponytail thing. And I really like that. It's giving her sort of a carefree vibe that maybe it didn't bring before. I don't know. But it's like just the flowiness of her hair and that one piece just coming to the front. I just really like that. So that's being added in there. Did a little cheat, copied some hair beads that I had painted earlier. We love cheating. Go ahead and use the lines you've already made. And then I painted those up and finished up that hair. And then it was time to add the flower in her hair. I was going off of a hibiscus flower. I searched up Caribbean flowers and that one came up and it really fit the vibe I was going for and it looked beautiful. So I started by sketching that out roughly. I was going off of a couple pictures, one for color and one for shape and petals. I had a couple references for what petals might look like because my first color sketch of Calypso, I just kind of drew in a flower. I didn't look much into it. But now I'm going off of reference. I always suggest using reference. And I did forget that I also added in her little flower lay as well at this point. You'll see me go back in with some darker shadows on the purple or pinkish flowers as well for some more dimension. But painting this flower in her hair was really, really fun. I struggled a little bit with the shading of it. I know that flowers have veins running through each petal, and in the sun, when the petals fold up a little bit, you get some different shading in there. But it was really hard for me to put into lines at first. I didn't want to think much of it. I didn't want to go in and paint every single shadow that I was seeing in these reference photos. So what I did first was just kind of some random lines throughout every petal, but it was looking a little too random. So I went back in and I retooled it, and I got to a point that I was happy with it. I erased majority of those shadow lines, lightened it up a little bit. That way it didn't take over the flower as much as it does right here. It almost looks like it's taking over the flower. It's not a shadow so much as like, I don't know, like a darker color to the flower. And that's not what I wanted. I really just wanted a light shadow effect on the petals. So that's what I came up with. And at the very end of it, we've finished painting Calypso from Epic the Musical. I'm so happy with how this piece came out. I'm happy with how the character design came out and how it really looks exactly how it looked in my head. What I'm showing you now is also Hermes and Calypso next to each other for a little character lineup. Hermes is definitely very tall, and I made him that way on purpose. And Calypso I made very short on purpose as well. What I imagined is that Calypso is a little bit shorter than Odysseus, even though she is a nymph goddess type of person. Whereas Hermes, he's a god, he's obviously going to be much taller than Odysseus. Plus, he has those heels on, so he's like mid 6 foot. But yeah, that is what I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for following along and watching me paint. It makes me really happy to paint and make these videos, so I'm gonna keep doing it. If there's anything you'd like to see me draw, let me know. I will continue this series of drawing characters from Epic the Musical, so if you want to see more of that, go ahead and subscribe now. And if you want to hit on those notifications so you see exactly when I post, that would be lovely. Thank you. And I can't wait to give you guys some more. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.